Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Speaking of Curves. I'm Marie Dene, the creator of The Curvy Fashionista, and your host for today. So we've been doing this series since the start of the Rona, since Big Rona came into town, as a way to help support, inspire, motivate, and really talk about how we can better support these brands, these plus size boutiques, influencers, creators, all these designers like in this space, and how we can best support them to as they're trying to make their way through the pandemic, right? And so we came up with this series and to have conversation, have a real talk for you to get to meet these designers, for you to get to meet these brands. And every Tuesday and Thursday, we do this live series. We have different guests, and I'm really geeked about today's guest, right? And we have different guests, and we have a conversation. I particularly am a little selfish with this series because it's actually helped my mental. It's helped inspire, encourage, and motivate me, especially as I'm trying to find my lane and my groove through everything, right? So as you're joining in, as we always ask, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know if this is your first time joining us. And as you're here with us, make sure you ask questions and leave comments because your comment may pop up on the screen, and we're here to help you, right? So let's talk about our guest. Our guest today, I've been watching him since he came on the scene. I like to be a little bit of a fly on the wall watching the space, and I was immediately impressed. Love the education, the passion, the knowledge that came from him. And just this week, we announced and shared that Gianluca is actually writing a book about the history of plus size fashion. So I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to know like what's going on, how we're navigating. Maybe we'll talk about our journeys and little things about the reason why it's important to know the history of plus, right? So join me in welcoming Gianluca Russo. Hello, Gianluca.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so excited to talk.
I'm glad that you're here. Like, hey, boo, hey.
I love the dress.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I'm rocking a Sea Rose Go shirt dress. So it's like a full dress action going on. Hella comfy as I'm sitting in my chair and working from home.
Love it. You need that. It's like a requirement.
It is. It is. So we've got some good mornings already. We've got Keisha from Arkansas. You bright and early. Hello, Arkansas. She comes to almost all of our lives. I see you, girl. I appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us.
Right? And like, hello, Monique. She a model. I know who she is. Hey, girl.
Nice.
Hey, girl. And we got Vanessa. Hello, Miss Vanessa. And then I think someone said, finally getting to see this. So excited about this book too, from Columbus, Ohio. Hello.
Amazing. So excited to tell you guys more today.
So I'm trying to figure out where should we start. Let's start from your grad, because you recently-ish graduated with your degree in journalism.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know we got this book that we're going to talk about. But for those who don't know you, they may have read you and didn't put the pieces together. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, totally. So I started writing in college. Before college, I grew up doing musical theater and performing. So that was really my passion, where I developed this love of storytelling. But I didn't start writing until my freshman year of college. And originally I was studying law in college, which was not a great fit for me. Very fast I realized that. So within a month, I started this blog that was theater-centric, that allowed me to interview performers and write about different shows, and that's really where I found my love for writing as well. And so very quickly, I knew that that was the career for me. That's what I kind of put all my efforts towards. And at that time, I discovered Teen Vogue, which was a magazine that I instantly felt represented in and resonated with so well. And so I knew that I wanted to make it to Teen Vogue. Now, I didn't know how to get there, obviously. I had no connection to the journalism field. My parents do not work in creative fields at all. My parents are immigrants from Italy, and they work 9-to-5 jobs and very construction jobs. That's not me. And so I was going about this on my own, but I researched extensively And my sophomore year, I had done some journalism internships. I started freelance writing for a few publications. And ultimately, my junior year, I got into Teen Vogue at the beginning of my junior year. And that's what kind of started it all for me there. So I began.
Wait, you gotta pause there. You can't just slide that in and be like, oh, and then I got into it. Like, because for many people, like that is a goal. That is a target for them. So, and you shared with me a little bit about your story. Mm-hmm. About what, and had it not been for some people, that you wouldn't, your path wouldn't have been shaped. And so this is also part of the reason why I say it's important to pay it forward, because no one has gotten here by themselves. And so for you reference, tell them a little bit about how that happened and why it was so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, Teen Vogue was my goal. I knew freshman year that's where I wanted to be. So for 2 years, I did everything possible to lead up to that. And a lot of that came from networking with people and meeting people inside Teen Vogue and within other magazines too, who would give me their time, assist me, help me become a better writer, because that's ultimately what I wanted to do. Yes, I wanted to be at Teen Vogue, but what I really wanted was to become a really great storyteller and to get to elevate voices that hadn't been elevated before. So I'm very thankful for the people who gave me their time. I would regularly go down to New York City. I was studying upstate, about 2.5 hours upstate. But I would regularly go down to New York City every other week to meet with people, have coffee with people, and particularly, from the outside, who influenced me the most and inspired me was Elaine Welteroth and Philip Cardi, who were running Teen Vogue at the time and who really changed the brand entirely and changed the positioning of it. And they really made me feel seen for the first time and also showed me that I could have a voice there. And so I got to meet with so many people who write for Teen Vogue, Glamour, all these other magazines, and they all kind of gave me assistance and guidance and taught me how to pitch articles and what Teen Vogue was looking for. And I took in all this knowledge over 2 years so that at the start of my junior year, I felt confident enough in my own writing and my own voice to pitch Teen Vogue. And so I thought very hard about what my first story I would pitch them would be. And obviously being a freelance writer is very difficult. Pitches are often rejected or ignored, so I was very scared. But I sent in this article that was actually about a scholarship I had gotten and about free tuition, which is a hot topic nowadays as well. And I got it accepted, and it was absolutely insane. And from there, I got to write more about entertainment then. I was writing about one piece a month at the time. And I quickly just continued to expand within there and go from there. But I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't have the network that I was creating throughout college and all the women and men who helped me become the best writer I could be.
I will also have to say, it's not just about, networking. You were diligent. I need for you guys to hear this little gem that you may have skipped over, right? So he mentioned that he was diligent, he was meeting with people. He was going out there. He was determined. Right? So when you have a vision, it's one thing to want something. It's another thing to literally go out there and get it. Mm-hmm. You weren't taking no from anyone. You were like, let's have a coffee. Where do you even meet you?
Yeah, basically. But I think that's what people saw when they met with me, was that I didn't just have this desire to work in magazines, but I had this drive and this passion. And I think that's what's, it guided me in everything that I've done from then to now this book, is that when I see something that I want or envision something, I'm very clear that I'm going to go after it and make it happen. Even if it takes me a year to do it, even if it takes me 2 years, I'm going to find the way to get there. And so when I, freshman year, knew I need to be in Teen Vogue, I spent 2 years doing everything possible to get there and everything within my control to make it more likely for me to succeed.
All right. So focus and drive and focus and drive and focus.
Absolutely.
So let's fast forward to you've graduated. When did you graduate?
I graduated in the winter of 2018.
Oh, so congratulations, because that's not too far behind.
Thank you. Yeah, 2 years.
You literally came out of school whoosh.
Yes.
It was I'm going for it. The world is mine, and I'm taking it. So with that has meant that you have literally started building up an amazing byline kind of collection for yourself. So share with the people who don't know, where are some of the places and your current place of where you have a column.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to Teen Vogue, I now work at Teen Vogue as a fashion reporter, and I've been there for this November marks 3 years since I started. And so, very exciting. I know I can't believe it's been 3 years. It's been so fast, but it's been great. So, in addition to that, I write for a bunch of other publications like GQ, Glamour, InStyle, Refinery 29, basically any fashion publications. And thankfully, I've been able to do a lot of reporting on plus size fashion for these magazines, which has been absolutely amazing. A lot of them now will come to me with different ideas, and they really give me the space to report on this topic and to dig into this community, which is great because in a lot of these mainstream magazines, it's something that hasn't been done before. So I've been able to freelance for a bunch of magazines. I'm at Teen Vogue, and then in August, I launched a column at Nylon called Plus Us, which kind of breaks down discrimination towards plus bodies in our society today, which has been so exciting and a dream of mine for so long to have a column. I feel very like Carrie Bradshaw about it. So very excited about that.
I feel very Carrie Bradshaw about that.
Honestly, I even got a necklace that had my name on it this summer to, celebrate the occasion. So definitely feeling those Carrie Bradshaw vibes.
Now, you've done a lot in a short time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that have been consistent from the articles that I've read from you is really about like drawing attention to, calling out, and celebrating, especially in places that haven't been inclusive to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like there haven't been, all of those places you mentioned, like plus has been kind of sprinkled, not so much kind of dedicated. So with you being at Nylon and having that conversation and leading that conversation there, like how do you feel, like what do you feel is the responsibility, like with the places that you're in and the conversations you talk about?
Yeah, I'm very conscious of the fact that at a lot of these magazines, I am unfortunately the only one who's writing about plus size fashion, plus size culture. I have kind of become this person people rely on to report on this community, and I'm constantly aware of the responsibility that comes with that, and constantly conscious of how my writing comes across to our community. And so I use these opportunities as best as I can to elevate voices within our community that haven't been elevated before. And so there are so many women throughout the years who have been erased from plus size fashion, whose voices are silenced, who don't get the same media attention or publicity or press. And it's simply because of reasons like how big they are, their race, their background. I mean, there are so many divides even within the plus size community that prevent so many women from getting the exposure they deserve. And so what I try to do in every piece I write is to incorporate new voices and elevate new voices that deserve to be heard more in the mainstream. And that's kind of the driving force for everything I do. I'm not the kind of writer who writes about myself. I don't write about my own story really, but I simply try my best to use my platform to elevate other people who haven't gotten the same opportunities but deserve them and deserve for their voice to be heard by more people.
I love that answer. Like, I don't know if you rehearsed that. Like, that is an amazing answer because, we all have all of us who have platforms have a social responsibility to our communities, to those who are coming behind us, who are there before us. And I really appreciate the awareness that you have. Because you have been in spaces like, we've had conversations throughout the years about certain platforms, like not including us. Like I remember some very vivid conversations. And so I am so happy for you. And yes, you are that plus size fashion journalist. Like that is your title. Like you have put a stake in the ground. You have screamed it, like, and you have established yourself as such, which leads us to, the power of plus.
Yes.
Your debut book that focuses on the history of plus size fashion. And tell us a little bit about like where this came from. Like where did this idea come from and how did it feel like actually making it happen?
Yeah, it's been an amazing process and definitely a dream come true moment for me. The Power of Plus is a natural extension of the work that I've been doing for the past few years in the plus size space. And so over that time, writing for magazines like Teen Vogue and Glamour, I really saw that there was so much history here that wasn't being talked about. And so we have so many models, for instance, of the 80s and 90s who people nowadays don't even know, like, Emmy, Angelica Morton, so many other people. You have Mode Magazine, Susan Moses, all these amazing people who nowadays this new generation doesn't even know about. And if we don't take the time to really reflect on the history and all the incredible women who have built plus fashion over the past 3 decades, we're not going to be able to really push for this size inclusive future fashion that we want. And so last September during Fashion Week, I was doing this package where I did 10 big features about plus size fashion. And I did them for all these different magazines. And I really wanted to take a stand and show that, we cannot constantly be tokenized in fashion media. We can't just be written about once a year, included in one round. Like, we should be the norm, especially during Fashion Week where diversity is being pushed so much. So I went to all my editors. I said, I want to do these pieces. They all said yes, and they all give me the room to do it. And so one of the pieces was about interviewing 26 trailblazers in plus size fashion. It was for Nylon. And through that, I met Hunter McGravy. And then over the course of Fashion Week, I interviewed her another 3 times, and we quickly became friends. And in having conversations with her, I saw that there is so much power in this community, right? It's about so much more than clothes. People look at us and they think, oh, it's a $21 billion market. It's great for our bottom line. It's great to make plus, which is true. But the transformative power that comes with putting on clothes that fit you for the first time. And that's what I saw in talking to Hunter and doing those pieces during Fashion Week, that right now, more than ever, we need to talk about why this community is so important and the power, the long-lasting power we're going to have. So at the same time, I read this book, More Than Enough by Elaine Welteroth, who used to be the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. She's now a judge on Project Runway. And the book inspired me completely. And these 2 things happened at the same time. And I thought, now we need this book, because we need to not only be reminded of the trailblazers who have brought us to now, but we also need to have conversations that will show us where we need to go next and how we have to push forward. So I came up with this idea very fast. After Fashion Week, about 2 months after Fashion Week, I signed with a literary agent, and I began writing this proposal. And so I worked on the proposal for about 8 months, and I got to write all about it. The proposal for a nonfiction book is about 60 pages, and it basically just breaks down all the different.
That's a lot.
Yes, it was a lot of work, but it basically just breaks down all the different sections of the book, and has all the different plans for it. And so in July, we went on submission, which means the proposal goes out to editors to consider. And then in August is when we got an offer on it, so we just announced. So it's been about exactly a year since I kind of came up with the idea that now we're in the book, and now I get to start writing it and working on it. It comes out in 2022, so I have about 12 months to write it, and then there's the whole publishing process. But I'm so excited about it. It feels still a little unreal for it to happen, especially happen so fast, but it feels really great, and I'm so excited to get to interview all these trailblazers for it, to tell their stories in the way they want them to be told, and to hopefully affect the future of the industry.
So, wow. That was a mouthful, honey.
It was.
And it's also like really inspiring, because that's a fast process. Like, you have been so, like, I don't want to say fortunate, but I guess maybe like the stars aligned for you. Then that all of this has happened, like, you were in school, you graduated, like, this a fast track, like, you doing a lot. And you also launched a community.
Yes, which has been.
So take a breath and then, like, tell us about this community.
Yeah, no, definitely things happen fast, and I'm very conscious of the fact that I have been incredibly fortunate. And I love this comment. Emmy and Mode are amazing, and so I'm so glad that you love them too. So I have been incredibly fortunate and very grateful for it. Basically, I was developing this book proposal for about 8 months, and the last month, I came up with this idea to launch a digital community around the book called The Power of Plus. Because I knew the book was going to take, 18 months to come out. Once we sold it, it would be a long time. But I felt really now during the pandemic with fashion as a whole challenge, but really, size inclusivity and plus size brands challenge more than ever, that we really needed to not only highlight brands and spotlight brands, but to have these really deep conversations. And so we launched this digital community in July called The Power of Plus as well. And it is a size inclusive digital community proving that fashion is for everybody. And what we do is we have a social media presence that's regular, but we also do these monthly virtual panels that will tackle big topics within our community. And we have trailblazers that I admire so much on every one of them. Our first one in July was about how Black women are fighting the racial divide in plus size fashion. And we had Gabby Gray, Kelly Brown, Lyris Cross, and Christine Thompson on it, and it was amazing. So we do those every month. We have a body positive book club. We do brand spotlights. But really what I'm just trying to create with the digital community aspect of this is a place for people to go to have really engaging dialogue and really engaging conversation that will help us push for this size inclusive future, which now more than ever, we really need to focus on and prioritize.
Right, and that's so serious. I mean, especially, I feel like the journey, like especially watching like the rise of Instagram and how that has like kind of helped grow and push forward growth in plus. And I watched like, even before I started, I remember the communities like Curvy Chicks and Fashionista and there's a couple of other ones, but I remember them. I remember, Daily Venus Divas and Plus Model Magazine and all these other platforms that existed, 12 years before I started, right? And watching this evolution of brands and media and platforms, and to be able to recall and read and learn, people were like, "Who's Emmy?" And I'm like,
it's crazy. It's
like
crazy.
I'm having connections. I'm like, "What do you mean, who's Emmy?" Like, man.
Well, what gets me right now too is I've been doing a lot about Tokara recently, and the amount of people who have been impacted by Tokara, from America's Next Top Model, obviously went on to be in Vogue. The amount of people who have been impacted or like models nowadays is insane, and yet
Where's her career?
Yeah,
career.
It's crazy. Like, she's obviously featured in the book, and there's a whole section about her and her impact. And it's crazy that so many people nowadays are either inspired by her, and that's the reason they're here, or so many people are like, "Wait, who's that?" And I'm just like, "Oh my God, there's so much that needs to be said. There's so many people who need to know."
And I appreciate you actually, making a stance and taking this, and like we're gonna talk about the history of this because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So get it. And that is amazing. So let me ask you then. We're gonna kind of pivot a little bit.
Okay.
Start of Rona. A lot of things paused. Well, there's whatever was normal yesterday ain't normal tomorrow. So how did you navigate? Because you were writing your proposal. You were, trying to think about, oh gosh, I got to shop it out, right? And go on submission. Like, how did you stay encouraged, especially at a time, because you moved from New York to Arizona, right?
Yeah, it was a very crazy time for me at the start of the pandemic. Basically, I moved to Arizona at the end of last year. And essentially my parents lived here, and I was just gonna set up a home base here and then be traveling for work. I was about to do a lot more traveling for Teen Vogue to cover things internationally. So that's why I moved here, to do that, and then to also focus on the book so that I could, finish the proposal and start writing and have just a solid home base outside the city that was more relaxed and of course cheaper, since it's cheaper here than in New York City.
Anywhere is cheaper than New York City.
Basically. So that was my plan. And so I came here, I moved all my stuff here. In February, I went back to New York for a month for Fashion Week to cover. I came back at the end of February, and I had so much planned for the next few months. I had a TED Talk coming up in May. I was supposed to go to Copenhagen for a week to cover this huge event. And the week I got back, New York closed down. And then the week after, Arizona closed down. And suddenly my plans were gone. And in addition to that, basically all the magazines that I was writing for said, okay, well, we don't have money to pay you anymore.
Right.
So, except for, of course, Teen Vogue, where I was at, but all the other magazines that I had worked for in February for Fashion Week were like, yeah, sorry, we just can't pay you anymore. We just don't have money. So it was incredibly difficult to not only lose income, then of course to be in a state that I'm not used to without any friends.
But wait, you have to be grateful because it's like you kind of have this foresight, like because imagine having that conversation and you were still living in New York. Oh my gosh.
It would have been crazy. So at least I, with my family here, my parents have a house that has like a nice backyard and everything, so I have space here to breathe. So there's definitely benefits to being here. The shock of it all was definitely hard to get through. And that was just hard the first few months. But what I did to kind of stay inspired and to get back on track, I really just connected with my close friends and the people in the community, specifically in the Plus community, who have always inspired me. And we talked about what they're doing to adjust and how we're all kind of navigating this time. And so just in having those,
So you had your tribe.
Yes, exactly. And so going to them, help me. Yeah.
And so what would you say then to someone because you have just been like, I liken it to taking constant leaps of faith on yourself. Like you're constantly gambling on yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like you already know, I feel like that in your head, you know that you are a sure bet. So you're like, we're going to make this happen. Like that's, for some people, it's inherent. They've had that their whole life. For others, that's a process that they have to develop or they have to nurture in order to get there. What advice would you give to someone who is curious about taking those leaps of faith on themselves? Because you've taken some serious leaps and they've all worked out for you. And it's so amazing to watch. Like, what advice would you share to that person who's watching your journey and they want to take a chance on themselves?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. But I think, for me, I didn't grow up this way in a lot of ways. I grew up very voiceless in a lot of ways. I felt out of place. I didn't feel connected in a lot of ways to my family's culture. My family's from Italy, and so I didn't feel really connected to that culture. I felt out of place because I didn't really have any particularly good skills. And of course, I wasn't skinny, and so I had a lot of body image issues growing up. And so I really didn't kind of come into myself and really, have a voice until I started college. And before that, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and doing all this stuff. But really, I hit a low point, and that's when I kind of decided, I don't want to be unhappy anymore. And so what can I do to make myself happy? Because there's no point in living if I'm living this unhappy life.
Right.
And from there is where I really began to take these leaps of faith and really trust in myself and my voice. And that's where I kind of developed it. And I think the best advice I can give on doing that is that you have to be as most secure in yourself, in your voice, and in your passions as possible. Because when you know that what you believe is the truth and what you believe is important, no one else can deny that. People can say what they want. People can have other opinions,
everybody got them. Everybody got them.
Everyone has them. So as long as you know that what you believe in, what you stand for, what you're talking about is incredibly important to you and that's your passion, that's all you need. You have to it's hard, of course, but you have to try to tune the other people out. Because if you are persistent and have that drive to show that your passion is incredibly important, your voice deserves to be heard, if you take those leaps of faith, people will respect that. And I think that's what happened with me is I was so confident in what I would talking about plus size fashion and culture, that people saw that and they respected it. They respected that I was so secure in this message and that I wasn't wavering on it. And I think that's what people look for nowadays more than ever, is people who aren't timid about their voice or timid about their passion, but are incredibly confident about it.
Now what about that person who's trying to build that confidence? For you, like you said, you didn't have that voice and you were, just starting to you said you set your mind to it, right? Sometimes it's hard to set your mind to.
Yeah.
Because I will say, my confidence has wavered all these past couple of years. Yeah. And it's only now where I'm really starting to be okay, this is who I am and this is my path and this is where I'm going. And so, for, everyone kind of, has to develop different muscles. Like, what do you think was probably like the biggest benefit or advantage for you?
I think the biggest thing is that I connected with all these amazing women so early on, and it was through their stories that I developed this confidence. And so,
You
you know,
surrounded yourself, you immersed yourself.
yeah, and immediately, as soon as I could, I put myself in this community and I met all these people. And more than just meeting them, I had real conversations with them. And that was kind of the benefit of my job, is that I was interviewing them. And so I got to ask all the questions. And through those interviews, not only did I get to write these pieces and get these bylines, but I got to build these human connections that influenced me and made me more confident. So the more that I wrote, the more people that I interviewed and got to speak with, the more I grew as a person and my voice grew even stronger. So really, and this ties back to the whole message behind the book too, is that this community is so powerful and so emotional and tight-knit. There's so much here. And that message and that feeling is what's impacted me to become the person that I am today, to have the voice that I now have.
Oh, well,